right. Today we are joined by the producer, Tobin, without whom none of this would be possible. We have Suni behind the lens again,
Hello.
without whom none of this would be possible. And I guess I could say that about everyone but me. Without me, all of this would be possible. The CEO, Commander-in-Chief in the house, and we have Chris Haueter, the venerable OG, without whom none of this would be possible.
And if anyone out there is really sad that suddenly a woman took charge, don't worry.
F off. That's what I have to say. F off. Why don't you guys put me in my place? What is your problem?
And so,
yeah, you best be. You best be scared, all you.
And so today's a topic. So most of you who know me know my combat-based philosophy. The overarching thing is a balance between all the aspects of these arts in which we practice. And we think street, we train sport, we practice art. And this episode is going to be kind of a discussion analysis of the hypothetical street fight. Is that correct, Tobin?
That's correct. We've been going over motivations for training, kind of working through what different things we might be thinking about or things that might be keeping us coming back to the mats. And one of the things that seems to be universal to all people's thinking about this is that there's some sort of hypothetical altercation, whether it be a street fight or whether it be a future MMA fight that people are thinking about when they're coming to train. And I'd be interested to know from some masters of the art what you're thinking about. I'd be interested to know from some professional MMA fighters what you'd be thinking about. And yeah, what is that?
Like anything that I'm thinking about? Like why I'm showing up? Or am I thinking about getting attacked?
Yeah, so not are you thinking about getting attacked, but like there is a little piece of the reason that you're training is to prepare yourself for a self-defense scenario, and that's the think street part. And so what does that look like? What are you imagining?
For me, it's never really been like a strong part.
That's not a big drive.
Yeah, and Chris would say that a lot of times, like women are coming in maybe for different reasons, like in general, that most men, I've heard you say this, that most men are showing up because they want to learn how to fight.
I believe that the primal drive for all sports, where people don't even realize it, is the war and the hunt. The reason why we idolize an Olympic hurdler and throwing a javelin is because we know if that guy's on our team, we're going to eat. And it's been programmed through hundreds of thousands of years, we seek security at Maslow's lowest hierarchy of needs. People deny that. They sometimes pretend it isn't there. And martial arts, an aspect of it, either by a fantasy version of it or a reality approach, part of that is fulfilling that need for us to feel secure in our person and place. And that's like the lowest need. Now, and when I say low, I don't mean less valuable. One could say it's the ultimate valuable need. And in our modern times, where in my opinion, thankfully, we humans over every generation overall, sometimes 2 steps forward and 1 back, we have become less violent. And Steven Pinker wrote a really good book. I can't think of it right now, where he goes through the long history of violence and stuff. It's been well critiqued too. I would say read the critiques of it. But when you go back and read, when you go back in the 1910s, you might go to church where your kid leg hurts because you whipped them because they misbehaved. And after church, you go watch a public hanging. Humans were far more violent the further back in time we go. And we've become less and less so. And I personally think, and I'm not applying any value judgment on this, but in essence I am, is that the reason why Jiu Jitsu is a popular thing is because it fulfills that need without massive amounts of injury. It's like you're cheating nature. The reason why we love sports is because throwing that 80-mile-an-hour pitch, you primally know if I'm in the wild, I'm grabbing a rock, I'm eating a rabbit. You will eat. And we aren't even like consciously aware of that. But oftentimes people who do train a street become obsessed with that. And from my perspective, I don't want to be in that place. I don't want to spend my life existing in around every corner is a bad guy, every parking lot's a rapist. Because to me, that doesn't make a quality life. I want to move higher up Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and I'm looking at self-actualization. But often addressing a primal needs is part of the self-actualization process, especially in a Hegelian approach.
Well, and what you're saying, I would think that that's more in alignment with me, like thinking about white belt me. I had a lot of angst and aggression, and I needed an outlet. It wasn't about me saying, oh, I'm afraid someone's going to rape me. I always wanted to fight people. Like I was thinking about like wanting to get it out instead of like fighting with the police, for example, or, you know, drinking to the point of oblivion or running for 4 hours straight. Like I had this energy inside me that needs a way to express itself. And that's the reason why I showed up on the jiu-jitsu class.
I think that a lot of us as kids were the kind of kids that would have tantrums or blow up, get in fights at school from kindergarten through about 12th grade. When you're that person, part of you feels zero control. So part of you goes, well, shit, if I'm going to fight, I'd better win. And one of the reasons why I think combat sports and martial arts, I'm splitting them up in the combat sports and the fantasy arts, which in there I sort of include a street. But both of those are addressing an insecurity that we have. And people that are attracted to play beach volleyball tend to have a different personality than those who want to do combat sports. And I'm not judging all of us who do the combat sports, as we're all insecure dudes walking around, chips on our shoulders. But I just think that in a positive way, martial arts can really help with that. It can also feed it and make it worse.
Yeah, because like, let's say that I didn't stop drinking, but I still trained, which I can't really imagine a world like that. But if you have like some skills and then you're still like doing really foolish stuff, then you end up like the dudes who go to prison and break everyone's arms and end up dying and all the things that we've heard about and know people who've gone through that type of road.
And I do think as well that like, what's that Einstein quote? You can't simultaneously prepare for and prevent war. If you're preparing for it, you're going to have it. And I don't necessarily agree with that. That's too peacenik for me. But I do understand if you have a tribe, like call America the tribe, call Jiu Jitsu the tribe, whatever, and everybody is constantly thinking about who's going to challenge me in a fight, who's going to attack me, there's going to be a lot of fights. And it's kind of like in this country, the more people prepare for political unrest, the more we're going to have a political unrest. It feeds a fear drive that at the same time it satisfies it, it exacerbates it.
So interesting. I was not expecting you to answer like that, but that makes total sense, and it makes sense that you would answer like that. And that's interesting. So there is really, for you guys, there is no particular thing that you have in mind, like, oh, I want to be able to defend myself when I go do this, that,
No.
and the third.
So, like,
I'm happy that that's an added benefit. That's how I feel about it. I'm happy
like an
that
accessory.
that I feel more confident in the world if somebody were to attack me, but there's no situation I'm preparing
Right.
for. This is about me.
Yeah.
Me facing me, helping me.
Yeah.
And then I get to help others to help themselves.
and I think as a
My mind's like getting blown here.
as a metaphorical example,
Yeah.
right? When we are training for the hypothetical street fight, if you're honest, you realize it's chaos, that you can't control the environment. You can't control if there are weapons or not. You can't. And that makes you either run around and train all the weapons, train multiple opponents, do all that. And if you're, like I've often said, no offense out there, you self-defense people, but give me a combat athlete in a weekend clinic, I could teach them self-defense moves. You take a guy who's done self-defense for 30 years, he'll lose a jiu-jitsu tournament. Will lose a boxing match, because when you just train a street, you have to limit it so much that you miss real timing, real chaos, real all that thing, which combat sports by nature introduce. We create a man-made game, and depending on the rules, we limit what is allowed. And one could say that often the brawl in a bar is technically unlicensed MMA. It's still pretty much sport. You can get hurt and killed, but most people believe that the argument in the bar, or one dude push, let's take it outside, that's an MMA match. Could the guy have a gun? Yes. Can it happen? But that's not the same street fight fantasy when you're being attacked. That's kind of a whole other world. And yeah.
Do you think, though, that it exists now? Because I think it does in the community, that there are schools where they train more realistic timing boxing,
Yes.
realistic timing jiu-jitsu,
Yes.
MMA, and they consider themselves self-defense all at the same time. I think
mean,
that that's something that is
yeah.
probably happening.
I mean, I personally think, and with jiu-jitsu purists will say I'm a traitor, but really, if you want to train for being attacked in a parking lot, the best would be a balanced MMA program.
Mm-hmm.
It wouldn't be to specialize in the jiu-jitsu or judo or Greco or boxing, Muay Thai. It would be a general mixed martial arts education.
With, though, the expertise of the actual jiu-jitsu
expertise,
grappling
yes.
and the boxing.
Yep.
It's not watered down boxing with watered down jiu-jitsu.
Right.
I've heard you say that the original jiu-jitsu that you got introduced to was more what
It
you
was
just
MMA,
described. It
yeah.
wasn't what we do nowadays.
It was pretty much MMA, but it also depended on which original dude instructed you, because they all had their own kind of style and approach to jiu-jitsu and what is the jiu-jitsu to them, because it hadn't been so canonized yet where this is the art of jiu-jitsu. It was still like kind of growing even in Brazil, and the sport had just really began blowing up, and people realized if they train for just to win within the rules of that sport thing, they're better off not learning knife takedowns and punching escape. They're better specializing on the grappling aspect of it. And they found with those rules, you're better to specialize mostly on the ground fight part, because if you can get it on the ground, you win. Whereas in Japan, judo preserved the art of the clinch and the throw more so than newaza, or the ground part. And like I always say, like, I wasn't there, so I don't know for sure, but I bet you if you went to Brazil in 1965 and Japan in 1965, the jiu-jitsu / judo looked almost identical. before it became more speciated through shifting the environment, which then alters the species of it.
Yeah, every time I see a video clip of like Carlson Gracie training or like Alio training or something like that, it always looks more like judo practice to me than it does what we do nowadays, which is to your point.
I think so. Yeah. And as far as I know, like, and I remember I was at the Mundials, I want to say this was 1997 or 8, and Haleo was there and in protest was wearing a blue belt because he said the black belt has been so watered down. These guys are basically what they're called wrestling in pajamas. It's no longer that was his form of a protest. Now I knew that any of those black belts that he's saying is a blue belt would have mopped him up, but he didn't know that because what he saw was the removal of the real fight aspect of it, and that was ruining the jiu-jitsu. And one could say that it sort of did. If you think that's a ruinous thing, I think that's a good thing to create a sport, because now people will fight within the rules of the game and become absolute experts on just shin-to-shin guard, how to pass in this one area. And if you're always punching, you would never work on berimbolos. It just wouldn't happen. By changing the rules, you let growth happen in areas that would not happen.
And Chris, and Tobin, both of you, and Tuni, everybody, I think that if we were really that concerned with self-defense, we probably wouldn't be doing jiu-jitsu in here, because Chris says all the time, you will fight how you train.
Yes.
And if we were that worried, we wouldn't be laying on our backs back here doing all of this, whatever stuff that we do, right?
Yeah.
Because out there on the pavement, we would only be practicing on the pavement, because you fight how you train, and we need to have that environment. He also says environment is stronger than will.
Yes.
So we wouldn't be in this padded environment doing what we're doing.
Now, I will say, though, as my combat base approach goes, think street is at the top of the pyramid. I don't say train street or practice it. I say you think it. So pretty much whenever I grapple, I am thinking about how unlike a real fight it actually is. Not how close it is, how, boy, I would have been punched hard there, or I'm not holding his hands there, or shoot, he just jumped up, I'd have gotten kicked in the head, whatever it is. And I do that to kind of fulfill my personal need, because I don't want to drift so far away from the primal roots that my martial art becomes a more inhibition than help.
But you say you don't think about that?
I don't want to drift too far.
Oh no, but when you're rolling,
does think.
You do or don't think like, oh,
I think all the time. Well, all the time.
I know that you do think all the time.
He's thinking about how unlike a real fight.
So you're rolling and you're going like, oh, I could have been hit there. That's what you're saying. You do that or you don't do that?
He does.
I do that all the time. Okay. Constantly.
Yeah.
I don't do that.
I do.
No.
You do that?
Sometimes. Remember the first time we rolled? I remember rolling with you and being like, oh man, I just remember thinking to myself, like, if this was MMA, I'd be fucking dead, because there's all these spots where I just felt like, because the way that you roll sets you up to be able to knock people out, stuff like that.
Yeah, I think that one of the most beneficial like street applications is just being aware of the hands. Where are the hands? Are they in range where they can punch you? Are you controlling their hands? Are they controlling your hands? Like being aware of that.
And then one other really key thing is, you take the guy who does no combat sports at all, and they're exhausted within half a minute.
Right.
So that physical aspect is 1/3 of the street puzzle. And that's the third that most people who practice street self-defense completely miss. That physical aspect of this is going to be exhausting, right? And so in that sense, you're almost better off being a sprinter than a guy who does kung fu moves.
Because you could get away.
Because
you need to.
Or wear him out. Wear that kung fu clown out. Because that guy hasn't trained that energy level that happens in combat sports. And like out of all the sports.
I just said, even in combat sports, it happens. With the guys that are training a lot, they know you beat up the body so that as the fight continues, the person is more tired so that you can have an advantage later on in the fight. So even with the higher level athletes, it's still the same.
It's a third of the game.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
I was just thinking when you were talking earlier that I would way rather get into like a street fight with a guy that's like a self-defense practicing guy than I would against like a rugby player or something like that. I feel like the rugby player would have the advantage.
But the best option for us upper belts is to get in a fight with a confident blue belt, either who does street or sport, because they're readable, predictable.
Yeah.
And we all know that, especially as I age, the guy who's the biggest pain in the ass is that white belt on his third class who thinks we're practicing fighting and they're super fit or whatever. They do weird shit. They back arch out of things that the blue belt knows, okay, I'm caught, I'm going to stop. But they hit you with weird parts of their limbs that like fly around. Like I always say, it's like putting a cat in a pillowcase. There's nothing about it that's fun. I hate rolling with that type of untrained spaz, and it's injurious. Rather than if I'm rolling with a skilled upper belt, even if he goes fast, I'm less likely to get hurt than the untrained spaz.
Well, and you also we're talking about the best case scenario for a fight. And like my personal opinion is that we shouldn't really be fighting. I mean, if we have to defend our family, that's one thing. But coming into martial arts, like I used to be all about fighting before, right? I wanted to fight. Like I was looking for it. Like, who's going to start the fight? Let me go. Where is it? But being in martial arts, like learning that we're practicing here and we're not doing that out there, and that we don't want to be in fights in the street. And like I feel like hanging out with you too, like that there was a time, a lot of years where we hung out where you would get pissed off at people and where I would be worried that a fight was going to happen. And that wasn't until you got like older that you realized you weren't going to do that anymore.
Yes.
And like really we shouldn't be doing that.
Especially
not to
after
shit
kids,
on people,
right? Having kids,
it's dangerous. It's really dangerous
it's really
be
dangerous.
in fights because I'm always saying it could get killed.
Yes. I'm just thinking now. I like this concept.
Or kill someone else, or cause someone.
Yeah, but you're showing up to do your Jiu Jitsu fighting and self-defense fighting, and then they just shoot you.
Yeah,
so there's
that could happen. Yep.
I like this idea that it's like not necessarily pinpointing a specific fight that you may or may not be in, but you're expressing your primal instincts by doing the training, which is making you a more enlightened, softer person in a way.
Yeah.
So now like you look at these hypothetical people, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this like scrawny, not well-trained, nervous, scared guy who's worried about street fights all the time and trying to figure out exactly how he's going to prepare for that. And then this robust stud of a guy or gal who's been training a whole bunch and has expressed that worry out of himself.
Yes.
Is looking like the tough guy that you would say, this guy looks like he's getting in fights all the time. This guy doesn't look like he's getting in fights all the time. But psychologically, this guy, the skinny guy that's nervous, is getting in fights all the time in his mind. Yeah. The big buff guy.
I mean, there's also the other aspect too that I don't think a lot of people think about, which is because we're in a controlled environment, there is a level of like calmness that you have, right? So like if you go into a street situation, you might be more calm, but there might be a version of that where you're too calm.
Yes.
Right? And you're
I've been there.
He told that story.
Yeah, and you're not like as aware as you need to be, and as turned on as like this is life. This is really life or death, and not like, oh, I do this every day. Whereas the hypothetical you gave of this scrawny guy, in his head, he might be like, this is literally life or death. I'm going to kill you. Like I'm getting out of this alive. Versus someone else who may be training all the time is like, I can do this. This is fine. I'll just choke this dude out and go home. And then it turns into something different.
And that always adds as well is like regarding the ethics of this, right? There's the legal part where you don't want to get in trouble and break the law and all that, or how much of that law are you willing to risk? And then the ethical aspect is, am I fighting for my ego or am I fighting for a greater good? And I think that part is often missed. And fighting because I'm insulted is rarely fighting for a greater good.
That's correct. And I think that there's a really good point, Suni. And I think that in terms of my ego, I think that I've completely let that go. I can't see myself in a situation where I'd be fighting for my ego. But if I were attacked and grabbed, I'm certainly grateful that all these dudes have been grabbing me all these years, because I think that I'm going to have a better chance of escaping and not just freaking them out than if I hadn't have been doing this.
And the other aspect, I think, when you think street, when you train sport, I'm trying to win. When you think street, your primary goal is to survive or help whoever you're helping but to live. Now, sometimes the best tactic is to try to win, but often it's not. And that's where like the sporting aspect enables you to properly discern whether that is an applicable approach or not.
And also, like, to me, one of the most important self-defense skills is to be able to run.
To be a runner.
To be able to run. Like, if you have to get out of somewhere because something really is bad is happening, there's a mass shooting, whatever, and you got to, like they say, it's like run, hide, fight.
Hide or fight.
What they teach our kids at school now, which is really sad and concerning that that's the state of the world that we're in. But run is number one. If I can't even run because I'm hobbling around and I'm so out of shape, then my only options are hide and fight. But run is first.
Zigzag.
When you guys mention that, when you're rolling and you think about what you're thinking about or not thinking about, I guess, it's a little bit interesting to me because I think from the beginning, I've always thought of that while I was rolling, primarily because I started Jiu Jitsu because I knew I was going to be doing MMA. So it was always in my head of like, this is where I can punch, this is where I can get hit, this is not safe, this is, and then as time goes on, this is also a conversation that's happening on the internet, actually, funny enough, right now on social media, where MMA guys are arguing with like jiu-jitsu instructors about how the jiu-jitsu that they're teaching their students is not actually that effective, and that what one guy said was any MMA purple belt will destroy any pure jiu-jitsu black belt. Yeah. And, they're going back and forth about it. I don't want to say that that's accurate, but the kind of jiu-jitsu that you have to learn and be good at in order to be an MMA fighter is, maybe I'm a little bit biased, but is, in my opinion, a little bit more effective because you're staying safe from strikes and also putting yourself in position to do damage.
The way I always imagine it, because otherwise there's too many uncontrolled variables and things. I picture twins. I've got identical twins. And if I get 1 year to train my twin and someone else has a year, and at the end of the year we're throwing him in a pit, one walks out alive, I would definitely train them in a far different way than if I'm instructing the art of jiu-jitsu. I wouldn't be so emphasized on the art. But now if I had 10 years, and I still don't know, at the end of the, you're going to chuck your twin in the pit and I have mine in, I would definitely, there'd be a lot of art in there. A lot of learning how to most efficiently do things, how to flow and all that, because that's an aspect that gets you to a higher level that you could then apply in your all-out brawl to the death. But it almost always depends upon what kind of fight is in the end of this, and And how long do we have to train? And one of the problems when you train street is you realize you don't have enough time. Because shit, what if next week is the fight? I gotta train now. You're super fast moves. You're almost ruining your training by thinking street and then trying to apply it in training. Whereas, like, if you want to get fast hands, learn how to box. If you want to learn how to clinch, do Greco and Judo. And then the clothing is a whole other aspect of it. There's always things where just even MMA gloves slightly alter the fight.
Yeah, that's the question that I have about what you said, Suni, is like, are we taking a high-level jiu-jitsu sport black belt in a gi versus an MMA purple belt? And are we wearing gis? Are we not wearing gis?
I'm assuming not wearing
All right.
gis.
I think that if they're...
Jiu-jitsu guys.
You just cut me off. What? A man cut a woman off? So I think that the black belt wins if we put a gi on the purple belt for sure. And the purple belt wins in the MMA fight. As it should be, because that's what they train in.
Yes, but I think the idea is most people in the street are not going to be wearing a gi or anything close to it, especially here in California. Like, it's normally pretty warm. So like a hoodie is probably the most that you're going to get.
The argument, though, is that the purple belt MMA is more prepared for the street.
Correct.
Right. Okay. So yeah, probably.
And it's more practical.
It's more practical for the street. But like, I think at the end of the day, most people by the time they get to black belt with the gi should realize that it's not the most street applicable thing to be doing.
But I would say again, we have to pretend it's twins. That it depends on the personality type of the twins too. Because there are some personality types where I think the jiu-jitsu guy would probably win, and others where I say, oh, the MMA guy would for sure win. Because a lot of it depends on the finer points of who these twins are who fight. But it would be a wonderful experiment, right? And like I say, I would love if like someone came to me, there were twins, and said, you train a twin, and in 1 year, we will have an MMA match, a boxing match, a Greco fight, and a jiu-jitsu match. And see who wins what out of what. That'd be a fun experiment.
I have a question for you guys on this twin thing. If you had one twin that you only taught defense, and you had another twin that you only taught offense, what do you think would happen in 2 years? In 1 month, for sure, the offense only wins. In 2 years, I think, depending on the personality and athletic skills of our twins, I think it becomes much more even. And then the more time we have, I would say a counter player would beat the... So the one who's probably the defensive person would win
He
more.
has to learn more. He has to learn some offense.
Yes, yeah.
Right? It's like Miyagi-Do.
Well, I remember hearing, actually, Hickson and I, like, last year, were having this lengthy discussion about the state of jiu-jitsu and all that. But that ultimately, pure jiu-jitsu in its purest form, the spirit is all counter, all defense, all in that Aikido spirit. It's not attacking, even though MMA is. But the pure jiu-jitsu, everything is counter. And when you play that, just rolling around, you start having really fun rolls. Whereas, like, when I roll with a lot of lower belts, I let them do all of the attacking, and I see if I can counter that and sweep it, or make them stick their arm out and arm lock it. I think of that as counter.
I think that's an interesting thing to propose, and I've never really tried that, but do you think that there could be an element of being the smaller, weaker person if you don't attack, then you're just going to end up getting controlled. Like if I let somebody get too far with controlling me, I'm not getting out.
That's
I'm
true.
sorry.
Yes.
They're strong.
Yes.
So I became more aggressive with my jiu-jitsu to make them have to defend, because if not, then I'm just going to tap or be stuck and be uncomfortable.
And
I can't risk as much when I'm training with big dudes.
Right. And that's where the essence of you realize that defensive martial arts becomes counterattacking, and attacking martial arts becomes a defensive entry as one attacks, right? It begins to blend. And you ultimately can't have one pure one without the other pure one. Back to Hegel.
Yeah, interesting. Do you have Suni, do you have a hypothetical thing in mind with your training, or are you just training for MMA?
It's funny that you asked that, because I was thinking about that as you guys were talking. And I think when I was younger, all I thought about was street, because that was what the reality was for me. Like I was in, I had started training when I was young, so I'm in like middle school and I'm always fighting because people are always trying to pick on me because I'm like, a short, skinny kid. I didn't have my growth spurt until I was like 15 or so. So I'm a short, skinny kid. Everybody else is bigger than me, and I'm younger than everyone else. I'm like 2 years younger than everybody else. So
From the Caribbean.
Right.
And if you run, it'll only be worse. Oh, look, that kid runs. Then it's like they're going to really get you. Yep.
And so that was all I thought about, was like, what happens if I'm at lunch and some kid pushes me or punches me in the face or whatever the case may be. And I was like constantly, and it goes back to Chris's point about the personality, because I was never one of those people that would just like be like, okay, I'm getting bullied, so what? It's like, no, if you want to bully me now, we're just going to do this, and we're going to fight every time I see you.
You got to have this out.
And that's just what it's going to be.
Yep.
I almost
And that's that fine line between honor and actually that is self-defense, because if you don't, they just come back meaner. Yep.
And funny story, which is how I even got out of that, was in 8th grade. I almost didn't graduate 8th grade because I was fighting so much that I was always suspended. It was never my fault. I'm not the one starting the fight, but I would just never allow people to just do whatever they wanted.
Yep. I totally understand that mindset.
And there was a time where, I tell the story all the time to my friends, I got jumped, right, in my neighborhood by people that I went to school with. I knew where everyone lived. It's not like we don't know each other, right? And I was at a park. They came by and they jumped me. And I tried to run. I did try to run. But they were like on bikes and stuff, and they caught up to me and jumped me, beat me up, right? And for the rest of that school year, every single time I saw them, we're fighting.
Yep.
I don't care where you are. If it's the cafeteria or whatever, we're going to fight every time. And I got suspended, and it kept happening. And I was telling the teachers and stuff, I was like, you are not doing anything about this happening to me. So I'm just going to keep fighting them until they stop and leave me alone. And it got to a point where we had a whole sit down, and my mom ended up removing me from that entire school district because she was like, this is going to get way worse. Yeah. And then that stopped.
Remember as a kid, when the adults, the teachers, principals, whoever, are explaining this, we just don't fight no matter what. You agreed, as a kid, that's bullshit. Yeah. You know that is total bullshit, that you adults aren't going to be around me all the time, that there will be a time where if I don't fight, then the next one will be worse. Yeah.
I'm glad that's not happening in our home life.
Not as much anymore.
But I think too, part of that is the environment too, right? Like a lot of the kids that I was in school with, funny enough, it was a better school system, but the kids thought that they were like tough kids, so they were always trying to fight. But then when I went to the other school district, it was actually with the kids that were tough, and no one did that.
Right.
Which is kind of like what they say in a prison. Because it's such a rough thing where respect is a huge part. You don't disrespect anyone, and they won't disrespect you. Sometimes it might be perceived as a slight, and if you handle it in a way with respect, you can avoid a fight. And sometimes I haven't spent any time in prison. I was in LA jail once, which was the scariest time of my life. But like, that also kind of happens with any, like with sports teams, military. There's an aspect where we humans in a tribe kind of size each other up. And even though you might know you could probably beat the guy, you know he will fight back, therefore it ain't worth it.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't want to be a guy who people know won't fight back. And you don't want to be a guy who picks fights, because then someone will go, oh, you're the dude who picks fights? I'm going to pick a fight because today I'm in the mood to fight.
Yeah.
Yeah, the reason that I got into training, I think, is because obviously I felt all this stuff as a kid, but I was not that kid that like was fighting all the time and stuff like that. Like there were some scraps and altercations that happened, but it wasn't like, I wasn't like Sunni's describing at all. Way more passive for sure. What happened for me is like, as I became an adult and I started entering the working world, I've really, really felt that primal, whatever that is, where, because I was working in construction and like, renovating homes and stuff like that. I really started to feel the scenario where these like rough and tough contractor guys would come to meet with me. And whatever that primal thing is, I swear I was like so aware of it at the time. I was
They
like,
would like
this guy
almost like
feels like
physically let you know,
I could kill you.
we're playing with like money and checks now, but if all this is gone, I'd kick your ass.
that. I felt that like in very professional settings too.
Yeah.
And I think when I made the decision to start training, it was like based on that. Because I was like, I need to do whatever I need to do to develop my spirit such that I'm not in that position, because it's detrimental to like all like my finances. You know what I mean? Really, at the end of the day. And I think that was like the reason that I got into it. So,
And a lot of, we'll call it populist or working class anger, whether it's coming from the left wing or the right, there's a sense that if you're a guy who knows how to fight, you can build a house, you can fix broken cars, and there's some fucking lawyer who couldn't do any of that, who's somehow making more money than you, and then laughing at you, it almost makes you want to change the world. Well, you know what? Let's go back to it's sticks and stones, because now I'm going to win. And it's just, that's kind of the subconscious anger of the quote-unquote working class against the quote-unquote elites is why should they get so much? Because they've rigged the rules to where my skills, building homes and brawling, are now worth almost nothing.
wasn't that kind of like stage 1980s Revenge of the Nerds?
Yeah.
Remember that?
Yeah.
It's like since then, that concept has been like exacerbated all the way to where the nerds are running the world,
Sure.
right? From when that movie started, that has like blown up into how things actually are to the extreme.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, I understand why the populist right hates George Soros and the college professor talking about gender. I understand why the populist left hates Wall Street and Elon Musk. Because these really do represent archetypal elites that are offensive when you feel judged. And like, why are they getting all this shit and we're not? Because they rigged the rules to get this shit.
You mean the money? The money, marbles, and
Money,
chalk?
marbles,
Is that what
and
the
chalk.
shit is?
Yep.
So you guys were talking earlier about how the world used to be more violent, and it's because I think we should bring that back. I do. No, and
Bring violence back?
Yeah, I do. I really do. And the reason I think that is because people understand where the line is much more clearly when there is violence. I'll give you an example. It's a very easy example, right?
10 years ago, I would have been so on your side on this argument. Yep.
But here's the example, right? In America, if someone murders someone and it's on camera, we saw you do it.
There's no ifs, ands, or buts, no doubt.
Right.
You maliciously murdered them.
You're
There's
going
no
to-
self-defense at
you
all.
confessed any of that, right? You're going to jail or prison. You're going to spend 25, 30 years, however long in prison. Then you come out and continue to live whatever rest of your life that you have. Add any of the other things that we know are completely wrong. Murder, grape, molestation, all these things, right? Why are they still alive? That's my question. Why allow people that do these insanely heinous acts to continue to be alive and integrate into society? I don't think they should be. And the reason I say that is because in the Caribbean, this is how things work. If they know that you did something, you're dead. And that's it. There's someone with a machete and they're at your door.
But then that person's a murderer because they killed you.
Well, are they?
What are we gonna do? Like,
Okay.
someone has to get rid of somebody.
You gotta
I just
answer-
don't think they should be here
You got
anymore.
to answer
Okay.
that guy barbecue.
That's me personally.
In,
right?
in the philosophy of justice.
Wait, sorry. And the last thing I want to add to that is the reason why I think that should happen is because then if people who have the thought of doing those things realize, oh, I'm not going to make it if I do that. My life will be over immediately if I do that. Maybe I shouldn't. They'll think twice about it. In America, the consequence is not strong enough. People that have money can get away with doing all kinds of crazy shit. So if the rule is for everyone, if you do this to a child, you're dead or castrated.
The
or whatever.
golden rule is he
Yeah.
who has the gold makes the rules. And
Yeah.
we all know that that's a bunch of bullshit.
Yeah.
But we also all know that, like, we have found out that the loophole of our current system, and probably has been since civilization, is when you have money, you can buy power. There's the being rich, where you have enough money where you could say, fuck everyone else. And there's having wealth. And with wealth comes power. And in the philosophy of ethics and law, there's like, and this would be opening a huge can of worms on a whole other show, but like, what is justice? There's justice for the individual who's been wrong. There's justice for society, and there's justice for our culture. And some people with great arguments on all these would argue that an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth leaves everyone blind. And then society never grows past a point where everyone's armed and running around and ready to kill a person if they've wronged me or my kind or my whatever. And that civilization, like what was it, Chief Justice, not Brown's, one of the, oh God, the W begins, said that taxes are the price of civilization. And what we have done is we have farmed out security to cops. And before there were municipal police departments, each tribe, each town would elect a sheriff. And then if the guy murdered and raped, that sheriff would organize a posse. And the posse would go and get the bad guy. But we also know that through that system comes a lot of, I know he killed her when he didn't really kill her. There comes a lot of vigilante justice. And for much of human history, we would have these really inappropriate things where the wrong guy got fucking lynched. And that happened clearly in the American South, where just because that kid was black and had stolen something once, we assume he's also the one who
did that thing. Yeah.
And so we've created a system of law that handles that. And then what we got out of that is prisons. And if you go back to 200 years, we didn't have prisons. Whatever punishment you got would be bad enough, like whether you're tarred and feathered or hung in public, whatever. We didn't put people away in prison. We didn't have prisons. If we did, they were military camps that we would round up the enemy or the Native Americans and put them in camps. but there wasn't this modern prison system. And the philosopher Michel Foucault wrote a great book on, I can't remember because it's in years, on how that changed the way people think and the way people are. And the panopticon, which is a model of a prison where the guard towers in the middle. On the ring are all the cells, to where you feel like you're always being watched, but then it removes privacy, it alters who you are. That's now our internet, is the panopticon. And it's creating a different kind of kid out there, which is why we're having all these problems with our kids. Because when we were kids, you might get teased at school, whatever. When you got home, you were home. Now, with that phone, you're never alone. It's always watching you. Society is always ready to judge you. And you just grow up feeling like someone's going to record you being stupid and your life is over. And that's why we've got this epidemic of suicides and all, because we've altered the way we think. And maybe Suni's right. We just bring back, let kids fight it out. But then would that get recorded? And when you got beat up and spit upon, that would either turn me into a fucking raging murderer, or I'd be so depressed. I don't know. I mean, it's more complex.
And to add to your point, as far as the prisons and stuff is concerned, the reason why we have them is also because people can make money from it now.
Yes,
And,
it's become a hugely profitable industry.
Michelle Alexander, who's an author, wrote a wonderful book about the industrial prison
I
complex
know
called
that book.
The New Jim Crow.
What's it called?
The New Jim Crow.
Yes.
Yeah.
Fantastic book. And a lot of what that really analyzes, and then like if we even start to speak about, like we were earlier, class warfare, those words are taboo in America because those words lead to Marxism, right? And so they've been so drummed out of us that we're not supposed to talk about class. We're supposed to talk about race. We're supposed to talk about gender, about what state you're from, all these rivalries where really the ultimate one is class. And in the last, since 1980, the rich have gotten richer, the poor have gotten poorer, and we're arguing about, in my opinion, the most stupid shit because we don't want to talk about class. And everyone likes to pretend they're in the next higher class.
Yeah. Interesting. We've rolled pretty far off the hypothetical street fight, but it's been fascinating.
Go street fight!
Yeah, go street fight.
So back to the original point. Yes, street fights are
Street fights are sick and legit.
I don't know. I don't think they're good.
No, they're definitely not. One thing I wanted to bring up, one hypothetical.
Suni, I was on your side 10, 30 years ago. Now I mix, probably because I'm 60.
fair.
Yep.
I think I can remember being a child and being out at sea with my family. And one thing that people maybe don't realize is that when you go from country to country through the ocean, the like laws that govern what happens to you in the ocean are kind
They
of like
shift and change.
they
Yeah.
shift and change. I think
No
there
man's
is like
land?
Wait, really?
there's like an international maritime law that like countries will agree upon
Yes.
when they're like figuring out what's going on. But like when you're out there, you're kind of out there. One thing that's for certain when you're out there traveling around, you can't have like guns with you and stuff
Right.
like that. So like this idea like, oh, I'm gonna go like sail to Japan and then I'm gonna go sail to
Yeah.
Indonesia. Like you're not strapped up while you're doing this.
Yep.
And you're out in the
It's kind of
open,
scary.
and
I
some-
wanted
And there's
M1A and a
pirates.
and
scope.
some
there's
dude
pirates.
that rolls
Yep,
up
they're
that
pirates,
is
yeah.
strapped can hold you hostage and
Yeah.
take advantage of you. So that's like something that's like a real thing that happens to people out there.
Mm-hmm.
Well, in the post-war world, post-World War II, the what's often called the New World Order, not in your fucking conspiracy sense, but is the American Navy has enabled the oceans of the world for a commerce. And like there's an anti-war absolutist left and an isolationist right. They actually have more in common than the internationalists, the slash globalists. America has enabled free trade. And it's just my opinion because I'm pro-America. If we let China have that, it is the stupidest thing we could possibly do. And they want it. But who knows? I think right now the oligarchs are realigning the world order. So we'll see.
It's another new world order.
Well,
A new world
and
order.
the thing is, like, commercial ships can roll strapped up.
They can.
So
yes.
like a consumer that's just cruising around from
What is
country to
what
country,
is a commercial ship?
like one of those big tanker ships that you see going
With
in
all
and
the-
out
with all
of
the
port.
goods, the
containers.
merch.
Oh, I
They
see,
have
I see.
guns and stuff. And like
Ah.
the general rule, my understanding from knowing some of these ship captains over the years is that like you have guns and like if somebody tries to pirate the ship, it's like shoot first. Don't even ask questions.
Yep. Don't
later.
even ask questions.
Yeah, they're pirates.
So
Yep.
you're just basically like smoking these pirate boats and then
If
just like
three
keeping going.
jet skis are roaring at my
And
big
like,
old
and
ship,
nothing happens. It's just
I'm
whatever.
opening fire.
There's no law. You're in the middle of the ocean, you know? It's like
It's
So-
self-defense.
so I think I kind of do have a hypothetical street fight thing in mind that comes from my childhood when I
Yeah.
remember being in that scenario and going from country to country and not having anything other than hoping that people
more
were
than
nice,
street
right?
For you. That's
hoping that people were nice and having aspirations of living like that in the future. I do have it in mind. That,
I think
like,
poles, gaffs, paddles, machetes. That's like what
that's why I
instantly
started-
pops into mind.
That's why I
like,
started karate, and I was actually thinking about doing some weapons stuff with Chi because he does do the sticks and stuff.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
I've read some accounts, like recent accounts of people that were like sailing from place to place and were pirated. And there was one recently where a dude just was like beast enough that the guys that like got on his boat, he just like picked him up and like threw him overboard. And like,
yeah.
So, wow, this is actually blowing my mind right now. I feel like I'm like in the Pirates of the Caribbean or something.
yeah.
So, I mean, I guess this might be a dumb question, right? But there are people that are just sailing around looking for other people that are also doing the same thing, traveling from
Actual
place to place.
pirates.
There are
Actual pi-
pirates. Yeah, you don't
like
know about
now,
pirates?
There are.
Yes,
2024.
there's pirates.
Oh yeah,
You haven't heard
Or
of pirates
25,
before?
sorry.
totally.
I read a book about an American who was held in captive.
Yes. What
yeah.
was that book?
I
you
can't
read?
remember, but I read a whole book about it. A big
Wow.
fat one.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, there's guys with little motorboats that go around and they
Yep.
hold people
Just
hostage
jack-
and take their
Modern pirates.
They're nothing like
Wow.
Pirates of the Caribbean, though.
Jet skis and AKs. Yeah.
It's not. What's his name?
I
It's not Johnny Depp.
you,
It's not Johnny Depp.
Lower your flag. I'd be raising stolen bones.
stuff. Yeah. I mean, it is kind of shades of that, right? I mean, these guys, think about it. You know, you're out there, and if you go on a big adventure like that and you just don't return, people are like, "Oh, they were lost at sea," but like the reality is,
That's why you need to practice
Maybe.
the martial art savate, which is based
Yeah,
on
do savate, not
maritime
karate.
fighting.
Come on.
the
your
original
boots.
naval martial art.
yeah. So I just think the practical thing for me is part of my drive to do it is to learn the
Yeah.
fighting skills, and I think, you know, I like what you're saying, and I connect with that too. But I think
Are you allowed to have like machetes and stuff?
you can have machetes and stuff like
You
that.
can
Most
have it not
countries are
for
cool.
self-defense, but for if the sail gets caught up, you might
Or
need
you
to
want to
cut something
cut
free.
some fish up or something?
Or
Yeah,
slice
and then the
fish,
risk, the reason that someone like me wouldn't want to like have a gun on my boat is like you get to other countries and they don't allow it.
right.
So
Oh,
like,
so
and
then
it's
you really
like
get-
You
hugely
might end up in
punishable.
a prison. What's that? There's a country in the Caribbean where recently an American had 1 round of ammo in his bag, didn't realize he had it. They wanted to give him 5 years because they are so strict. No guns,
I
no
think it was-
ammunition.
But you
no
can have a
Saint-
flare
Saint
gun.
Bart's, probably.
sometimes.
Yeah, you have a flare gun, but a flare
You could
gun.
just shoot somebody
you
with
could-
a flare
you can.
gun.
There are some things, you know,
Especially
spear gun.
when you have me who knows how to modify the rounds. Because I spent
So
years
you're getting
thinking
pirated, and then you modify the rounds real quick.
No, you have them pre-modified.
Okay, well, he'll pre-modify your rounds for you. For
I
the flare gun.
spent years in that prepper mindset. Like it's been probably 20, 30 years now. But like I was totally into that. Like thinking about how everything needs to be a weapon if I have to, what will I get my food,
We
realizing
almost built a bunker.
for the guy who stockpiles food, you actually just become a target for pirates. It's like there's chaotic things happening, and ultimately, I realized the best thing you could do is be fit, have 3 days of all chow, have a weapons and martial arts.
You know, something else now that you were talking about weapons that I think about too is there are a lot of people that think about that like street type of thing, but they think about it in the sense of guns
Yes.
and not combat.
Yes.
So they're like, oh, I need to always have a gun. I need to have guns all over my house.
But what I'm saying is that's cool if you're in the U.S.
Yeah,
But like
exactly.
most other places are not down with the guns all over the place.
And I
like,
love guns. I've had guns my whole life. I loved them as a kid, was absolutely obsessed with them. I still like, but I also have a greater societal view of them. And I don't want to piss off any of you fellow owners out there, but I definitely understand this part of this Second Amendment that says a well-regulated militia, implying the government gets to regulate it. Because if we go that, like, no, you should be able to own any gun you want or anything, can I have a machine gun? Can I have an attack helicopter? Can I have a tank? Because the argument isn't about what kind, they changed the argument into we're arguing about what specific gun, make, model, and style we have. But ultimately, if your argument is you need guns to protect yourself against a tyrannical government, then you're going to need a lot more than an AR and an ammo can. But then they might argue, no, because we will organize ourselves to take over a local armory and then build you go down the rabbit hole, and you could go deep down that rabbit hole, which there's a lot of highly skilled, highly trained subgroups who do have all those plans on how they would increase their firepower when they needed to.
Wow.
And I think, Tobin, you made a good point for how starting the martial arts is kind of like a can of worms.
It is.
It's not just like you learn Jiu Jitsu
totally.
and then you know it all. Some people do think that way. And I learned Jiu Jitsu and now I could do an MMA match.
Now I'm safe.
But really, you just realize how much you don't know.
Yeah.
That's how I feel. How much
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if somebody attacks me with a gun. I haven't spent years training defense against weapons or a knife or whatever it is. I know that I don't know a lot.
Yeah, it's just kind of funny because the one major observation that I feel like I've noticed over the time of learning martial arts is when I started, I kind of thought that like jiu-jitsu was going to make you tough for a street fight completely. And like my takeaway is that like, honestly, like a dude that played football and is super gnarly, like that's probably the best thing for a street fight. And it's almost like the it'll definitely help you for sure. And
well, that's why like the NFL is called the modern gladiator, because in essence they are playing a game that mimics warfare before guns.
Yeah,
where your lines of troops and the battering and it's kind of like those guys make excellent grunts because you need a guy who will charge and get to that area really quick and run through shit, right? And all sports, again, are all metaphors of the hunt and war.
Yeah. But being that guy is not in most of our DNA to be that football player guy.
Yeah.
Like, I can't be that football player guy.
Like certain people,
But genetically, it's a
So that's why I
heavier
think
weight game. Yeah.
And jiu-jitsu was supposed to help neutralize that to some degree. I think
that's the sales pitch.
Yeah, that's the sales pitch. It's supposed to, but at the end of the day,
No,
we can't all be that big football player guy.
You know what?
What can we train to?
What was
to neutralize
really weird at Andy's one of Andy's soccer practices the other night? It's at the junior college football field, and when I went in to pee, the football team was pouring out, and I was instantly struck how young they were, because I'm old now. And because they're not pro or college, how not big a bunch of them were. But I was pleasantly shocked. Like, wow, that dude's only about $185. And,
Yeah,
and
but you
could kick all these
realize
guys out.
the ones that are
not all 190 and up, right?
but
It
they're
was-
getting smashed though.
Yes,
Those littler guys, and
they
they're
are getting
probably not
smashed.
going to go pro. 'cause
no,
they're at El
they're
Camino.
not going pro.
They're not
Yeah.
going pro.
No.
Oh man, I went to an Angels game. We did Little League Day at the Angels Stadium last year with our kids, and we like walked out on the stadium with the kids and like met some of the players and stuff, and they were warming up like, so we were at the same elevation as the guys warming up. My God, these guys, they look like, when you get up close to these dudes, like a bunch of them together, like doing athletic stuff,
they're
they
fit.
look non-human.
Yeah.
Like they're so fit and
They
everything's
are fit,
so
yep.
robust. I don't even know if it's even like the sheer size.
Yep.
It's just like,
Yep.
clearly these are like a different
This
class
guy-
of human beings. You know what I mean?
Yes.
It's crazy.
He's holding a bat. You could instantly say, here, hold this broadsword. We got to go clear this building. Yep.
Yeah.
That's very interesting.
Yep.
I was going to say something. I don't remember what I was going to say though about that whole weapons situation.
The
Weapons
guns,
is a
you're
can of
saying,
worms. But
guns, like
yeah.
how like Americans are all about people are wearing guns and stuff to fill that.
Now, some people say, and there's an argument both for this and against, and they're both valid, that a polite society is an armed one. And some people have a mystical view of like the Wild West, where supposedly everyone had guns, therefore people didn't piss each other off.
No, they did because
But
they were
really-
1, 2, 3 and shot each other. Come on.
No, the reality is it was much more violent. There were towns in Arizona trying to ban guns back then because you got drunken cowboys getting in barroom fights. Like there's like I say, there's arguments for and against, historical evidence for and against, but it is true, at least in most of the world, generation after generation, we humans have become less and less violent towards each other. And like, even though news will say, oh my God, murder rates up and all these things, actually it's down right now and has been for the last 5 years, but some people don't believe that. But and part of that is because as society, we have agreed that we are going to take the monopoly of violence and let the state handle that. And that is our police and prisons and jails. Instead of, when that guy stole my son's bike up the street, organize some things, go over to his house, demand the bike, his dad, before, you know it, I'm in a gunfight. Like, there are reasons why the legal system, I believe, and I think it was Winston Churchill said, like, shortly after World War II, when the world's realigning, and what is it? The French do the cooking, the Italians do the art, the Germans the engineering, let the English handle the law. Because English law, which is basically what loosely we are, enables transactions to be done in a way in which you don't get fucked over all the time. Because we believe a deal is a deal. Now, there are cultures out there and subcultures in the U.S. and all that don't believe a deal is a deal. But generally speaking, you sign a lease, you have committed. You don't change your mind in a month. And that is backed up by a system of checks and balances and courts that we have to trust that judge is going to be fair and impartial, and the jury of our peers and all these things. Like, most people don't understand the complexity of how that makes society more peaceful.
Mm-hmm.
And it's at risk now. All right.
Agreed. Okay. We're running out of time. Let's
right.
keep moving on with this show.
Let's
that was
go,
some interesting
Toby.
stuff. Jeez. That was awesome.
Let's get after it.
All right. You wanted to say some
I want
stuff?
to say something. I just want to let everybody know over there somewhere that Chris is doing stuff. Chris is getting back to it.
Yep.
He's having his first seminar here at UACTP in LA. First seminar of 2025 on February 22nd. It's a Saturday. So if you're in LA and you want to check that out, you can contact them, or you could message me at info@combatbase.com for more info. Headed out to Bethlehem, Pennsylvania on March 8th at the Inverted Gear Academy.
Gear.
Then we're going to
they
go.
have a gym now?
Yep.
I didn't know they had a gym.
Yeah,
That's
they've
cool.
had a gym
Yep.
for a while, I think.
Yes, they've well, fairly long time. Yeah.
Yeah. Then he's going to be in Michigan on April 26th, Combat Base Flint. Headed to SBG Bend, Oregon, May 17th and 18th. He's going to appear at the Loyalty Jiu Jitsu camp in Elko, Nevada on May 25th. Modern Fighting Concepts, June 24th in New Jersey. And
New Jersey.
And then,
Get the
drum
fuck
roll,
outta here.
drum roll, hold on, drum roll. Combat Base is having another camp.
Woo!
July 18th through 20th in Cali, Mission Viejo. And more information is coming soon on that at combatbase.com. We're super stoked to be able to do another camp, and you'll be able to sign
What is
up.
the camp?
Camp? When?
No, what is the
What
camp?
is the
Yeah,
camp?
what does it entail?
What
Yes.
is the
I don't know
camp?
anything about the camp.
Well, we're going to start off with a women's only seminar, which is going to be just for the ladies, and then we're going to kick it
Highly
off.
controversial.
A highly
But don't be
controversial.
offended out there, guys. Don't
Yeah.
be offended.
I'm going to have Casey come teach, and if I'm feeling better, I'll do some stuff too. Hopefully I will by then, but you never know. So Casey Hamner is going to come teach out of San Diego. And then we're going to have Welcome Open Mat. We're going to do 3 full-length seminars with Chris. So those are 2-hour seminars, one Friday night, one Saturday, and one Sunday. So you get 3 back-to-back full-length seminars with Chris,
It's
as well
always
as
the stand-up, clinch, and ground, because those are the 3 aspects that are often neglected by one style or the other.
That's what it always is? Okay. Well, we're going to have a section of catch wrestling with Brian Roy, who's been on the show.
Nice.
We should have Jerry Wetzel on the show. We're going to
Yes.
have Jerry Wetzel
Weapons.
do some red zone knife
Yes.
stuff. We're going to
Whoa.
bring the weapons in because we need to know how much we don't know.
And by
There you go.
far, guys, I have seen all kinds of self-defense systems about knives and all that. Jerry has compiled the best of all those into a great red zone system.
And we learned about that from Mitch Langman when he
Yes.
was on the podcast.
Yep.
We learned a little bit about
We learned a little bit
it,
about that?
it,
Okay.
yeah.
But Jerry runs around, instructs
He goes around the world.
U.S. Marshals, Australian, German police, yeah.
Yeah, Jerry's awesome. So he's going to teach a section. I'm working on getting another thing secured. We're going to do some yoga. We're going to have dinners. We're going to maybe hit the beach at the end. Just a general fun 3-day weekend. Hope you can join us. But
Yeah, I'm
there's
trying
going
to
to be
go
a
to that.
limited number of tickets. So once they go on sale, you should buy yours soon.
Yes.
The end.
Yeah, I got to say, I went to the last combat base camp in Reno. It was a great experience. The whole thing was so fun.
So glad to have you there.
Yeah.
I know, my protectors.
Yeah, we met so
When I'm
many.
getting hassled in the
we met,
the bar.
Oh, yeah.
we met so many cool people. It was great, and just the seminars are epic. The whole thing's epic. So looking
Cool.
forward to it.
Cool.
If I'm not tied up with my Savat class, I guess I'll get on too.
In karate.
Yeah, like karate and Savat. Yeah. All right. All right. Epic. We're gonna do a cue. We got a cue that came in. We're gonna take a big left-hand turn
Ooh,
and
left.
answer this cue. Again, if you want to hit the hotline, 949-791-7763, podcast@combatbase.com. You can email us, all right? So here's an email we got. Dear Chris, Melissa, and the Combat Base podcast team, I hope you find this message well. Thanks for the engaging and insightful content you consistently provide. Questions for Chris. Involvement in fine art. You've mentioned the fine art world in past episodes. Could you elaborate on your connection to it? What are some of your favorite pieces you've created? Please share a few in the video feed. Could you share insights into monetizing art and any challenges you've faced? Does making art make you better at Jiu Jitsu? Observations on industry practices. You've touched upon topics like like money laundering and the exchange of sexual favors in the art industry. Have you encountered these issues firsthand?
Oh my God.
How prevalent do you believe these practices are, and what impact do they have on genuine artists?
I'll
Now-
say I wish somebody offered me $1 million and they'd make me an artist or whatever, or I would have done it.
Would you do sexual favors?
Depends on
If
how
doing
much.
sexual favors meant that my art is being auctioned at the Christie's, I would do it. No.
All right,
But then I wouldn't be a real artist more because I'm a sellout.
Yes, don't be a
you're a
sellout.
sex worker.
Right,
So-
sex worker.
Hold on, we got a little more here.
Okay.
So this person's personal experience, having worked in the fine art world for a decade, I've observed instances that align with your discussions. For example, a significant multi-million-dollar sale involving a German dealer, which later materialized as a clear case of money laundering, and situations where personal relationships influenced artistic recognition and financial transactions. In the case of the German art dealer, he purchased over $10 million worth of limited edition prints and sculptures from our publishing firm. We finalized the transaction on our end and got our money, but communication with the dealer ceased shortly after as he disappeared. A substantial portion of the art remains unclaimed for years before it was resold. Many people lost money. Over time, it became evident that this transaction was likely a means of laundering money. My bosses played dumb, but again, they got paid first. Additionally, I've witnessed scenarios where personal relationships significantly influenced artistic recognition and financial transactions. In one case, a young artist with objectively subpar work received substantial financial support and exposure due to her intimate relationship with an established non-agrarian artist. She was in her early 30s.
Yeah, this dude's writing essays.
90s. This included direct monetary transfers and orchestrated purchases of her art to inflate its market value. Thank you for your dedication to producing such compelling content. I look forward to your insights on these topics. Best regards. This guy's name's Chris.
Thanks, Chris.
Or gal. Could be a Chris
yeah.
gal.
Thanks for your.
Is it a K or a C?
C.
Then it's probably a dude.
Well,
Usually women have K for Chris.
Yes.
Either way.
But
We'll
I
leave
do
it up to
know a male who has a K for Chris, who's actually super cool dude, combat vet, very manly. And
all right.
Letters
He
make
does
your
okay.
manliness or
I remember being kind of surprised that he spelled his name with a K. I just thought, oh God.
could be
But
like Christoph.
the German versions is
Yeah,
often
German.
K.
Yeah.
Christoph, yeah.
Christoph, that's what I'm talking about.
I wouldn't
All
have
right,
thought
Chris,
twice
now
about it.
All right.
pontificate a bit. So
Okay, so the one thing I recommend, I can't remember one of my favorite British art book critics. He died like 10 or so years ago. You can look on YouTube and find him. I think he gives the most honest rip on what has happened to the modern art world.
someone does that.
I can't think of his name,
I know.
but if you want a better one and be more humored, Philomena Kunk, who's this British fake mockumentarian, she does these great things on trying to understand art. They're funny as hell, because the fine art world is a world that when you're not in, you want to be in, because that's the fine world. That's where the money is. That's where the champagne is, all the cool stuff. And then there's the lowbrow world, which I'm more of a lowbrow artist. But obviously, there are lowbrow artists that make it into the fine art world. And some of them are now the biggest pieces going out there. Think of the Banksy, right? Like, that's street art, like going into the fine art world. There's all kinds of street artists who make the transition into it. Because what the fine art world sells is a narrative, a story. So if I take that piece of canvas, and because I'm some important artist, and I throw a bottle of paint on it, and I get mad, and I cry, and I scratch it, suddenly that's worth millions of dollars. and then some fucking art analyst will do some bullshit explanation of what each little line means and how, like, I'm one of those people that thinks that's all bullshit. That most of the fine art world is full of, God, this is going to sound so terrible, and fine artists are going to attack me. There's so much fucking schlock out there that is passed off as fine art that I'm both envious, because God, I can make that kind of schlock too, and I'm also appalled that, like, people think it's art.
But I've heard you say that a lot of times artists are more critical of other artists.
True.
So it's you looking at that stuff as an
I'm
artist,
very
me
critical
looking
of
at it
artists,
as like
yeah.
a non-like artist, this kind of artist. I think I'm an artist in a lot of other ways, but
Yeah.
I'm not that kind of artist. So not that judgy about art.
And art,
But you know if the art is not good, like you'll see stuff and be like, I don't understand this, versus something
I'm not
else.
that into art, so I kind of like just kind of throw it all
that
the
is
same.
the thing. Okay, if you weren't an art person at all, and I took a Rothko out of LA County, which is worth millions of dollars, which is a red canvas with a blue line across the bottom, and I stuffed it in a garage, you'd throw it away. You'd say, "Oh, look at this undone."
I might like it
piece."
for my living room. You see what I have hung up there.
Yeah.
So you don't know. Like one
Okay.
person's trash is another person's
All right,
treasure.
Andy Warhol. And I'm going to piss
Campbell's
off.
soup?
I'm going to piss off some people out there. Andy Warhol's the biggest fraud on the art world
Get him.
there ever is.
Get him!
Oh,
Get him!
Now listen,
shit.
Listen to him.
I could even find you his quote where he literally says it. That I am bullshitting the fuck out of these hooty-faluty New York art people, and it's bullshit.
So he
And
was like
knows
the
it's
original
bullshit.
Banksy?
No, because
Because was he trying to make like a statement that he was
No,
bullshitting them?
no.
Or he just wanted money?
Was it bullshit because he was making things that were low effort and not really anything, but selling it for high prices to rich folks?
Well, okay, one of the things.
That's fine with me. He
All
can
right.
do that.
Yeah,
I
okay.
mean, I would do it.
Yeah.
Okay, Andy Warhol mass-produced art. So one could say, in essence, he's the first post-modern artist, right? And then we have to talk about what modernism, what classical art is, modern art, post, and like gets to a whole fucking thing, subcultures and all that. There are artists that I think are not placing a lot of technical skill who do great art because that art has an expression that is original or not been done yet or like whatever it is.
Like a Basquiat or something.
Right.
This shit's
And
so sick.
There are reasons, I get the highfalutin reasons why, and sometimes agree why that why that piece of street art has transitioned to now fine art. And ultimately what it is if somebody really rich buys your art, then your art suddenly becomes really valuable.
And that didn't happen to us because
No.
the guy was kind of asking about your experience as an
My
artist.
experience as an artist is I haven't met the really rich guy who will buy my art or let me suck his dick yet. I'm
Sorry, Mom. But Chris, you were really into making art for a period of time, and that's when you produce these pieces
Yes.
that maybe will show or not, but you produced
Yeah.
a whole body of work.
I
and
did a
you
lot of
had
work. Yep.
few shows.
Yeah.
We're gonna meet some super rich dude that wants to fund the show. And we're gonna be like, hey Chris, I had a meeting with Jean-Louis last week.
Make
and,
me Banksy! Do it! Make me Banksy!
You know, he wants to blow up the
I'd
podcast
be like,
now.
I'm sorry, buddy.
Because if I had $300 million, I could get therapy for sucking your dick.
you lost your mic. We're
Are you still here?
I'm gonna be like,
Probably.
I'm gonna be like, Chris, I had a meeting with Jean-Louis last week, and sorry to let you know, but he said he would give us $6 million to produce the podcast, but
Let's do it.
you have to
I'll sell out. No, I mean, look.
Don't be a sellout, Tobin.
These are all jokes.
It'll be just one time.
I would have to evaluate.
Just do it once.
I have to evaluate what my children would think. It's not just about me making money here.
They'll never know.
They would know. In the internet, we're in the panopticon.
Yeah, that's true. don't do it. The pod's going to get successful on its own.
And Chris was making a lot of art.
Your
And
art
then
is
he
insane.
lost his enthusiasm. And we had a couple of shows and sold a couple of pieces, but not very much. And
There was a couple reasons why, and they sort of simultaneously occurred. I have always wanted to be an animator, and I've always known that that requires a team. Like, it's very hard to do alone. But with the modern computer programs art, suddenly work that would have taken 10 artists hours to produce one animation of a thing moving this, you could do on the computer. I'm like, oh, cool, I'm doing this. And I'm in this really cool art class, a really cool prof. I'm one of the oldest guys in the class. It was the most, it was going back to college. I'm sitting next to a transgender person. I'm the old white male in the class. It's like totally artsy fartsy. It was the first time I ever heard of a safe space. They had one on campus, and
Wait, like a literal safe space?
yes. But anyways, there's a whole story of this, and I was sitting next to this one really cool older broad from Argentina. We were like the oldest in the class because we're going to learn how to animate. We had all our dreams. It was 2017. It was the world had changed. All this stuff happened, and the prof was really cool. He'd worked for Pixar, Disney, like this animator. And I'm in the class a month, and we keep going over story, building characters. And I'm like, I already got my fun characters. I already got my fucking story. Let's learn how to animate. I got to learn how the computer program actually works. So after class, I go up and talk. I show him all my stuff. He loves it. And I asked him, I can't wait to learn
the software.
not After Effects. Yes. And he said, you know what? You're wasting your time, because everything these kids in here learn within a year is going to be obsolete. AI is going to take this whole thing by storm. And within a year, they had on the iPhone the little animated characters. That would have taken hours in the old. And so and granted, this is just one guy's opinion, but I remember walking out of there. This was 2017 when I first started really thinking about AI, consciousness, what it is. The world is changing. Who are we? Am I my memories? Am I a program? Could I upload my brain? We have scanners that can scan our brain. I'm reading Ray Kurzweil. I'm getting into all this. And I suddenly didn't want to animate anymore because I realized AI is going to fucking be able to do it.
And you didn't make art anymore either.
I didn't make a lot more.
You didn't make a lot more. We have some prints at combatbase.com.
But I do have some. Yeah, I make shirts every once in a while.
I want to say that your art actually has really inspired my jiu-jitsu. I feel like the feelings and thoughts that your art pulls out of me makes me fired up to do jiu-jitsu.
That's cool.
Because the image and the view that I have of what I'm doing and stuff, and the way that all the things that you show, I don't know what the story is behind every single one, but I have my own little interpretation, and it has inspired me to keep training. And I think it just inspired me and made me feel stoked many times. And I think your art's amazing. And my question for you,
go ahead.
as I've known a lot of people like this, why do great artists make excuses for not doing art?
Well,
because I'll give you a real short one, and then because we're artists and we're sensitive about our shit.
It's personal.
There you go.
That's
true.
it.
There you go.
And you don't want other people to
judge it.
And it's also part of it where you also don't want them to misinterpret what your message is, and it will be very hurtful to you because it's a personal thing if someone is misinterpreting or shitting on something that you made. So it's really hard to let go of that.
Okay.
But now I will say that I was really into art when I was 22, 21 to 24. I'm still pretty into art. Had an experience. Sculpture I loved, bronze casting, all that. And then I realized I'm in this class where all the people who had the money were either the wives of rich guys or had to hustle money, and like I didn't want to do that. I need a real job. Anyways, I put art for art's sake on hold, which is what I thought would be for 5 or 10 years, but it was decades, right? Then I had my whole new experience of life, Phoenix rising from the ashes, a whole new me, and I got back into art. And I thought I wanted to learn how to animate, and I wanted to learn a computer art. So I jumped in. I'm doing computer art classes. I'm realizing, like, oh, the artists haven't gotten any better. The equipment's gotten better. Photoshop is fucking incredible. No wonder art looks so awesome now. And I'm playing with and doing all that. And I really believe that the only reason to do art is ultimately for you. It's like a question.
Martial arts too.
Right. And martial arts has helped me. I don't give a fuck how my art is judged at all. But when I'm in the classroom with a bunch of young artists, I feel that emotional attachment to the art. And they're so worried about that. Like, please tell me if it sucks, because I'll fix it. I have a whole other approach now on art.
We're going to interject real
Yeah.
quick. 1 second. That's how you feel to me in a class with a bunch of young martial artists. This attitude that you're describing, I feel like I see you do that attitude.
Yes.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Because if art is going to be all about me, if I'm just self-absorbed, I'm going to miss me. I want input. I need a mat room where I'm rolling with my peers to find out if it really works.
But that's kind of like having a show.
Yes.
Like, you create your art and then you put it on display and people get to be the judge.
Yes. And in a world where you put up your art in a show and a person says, I love that, and snaps a picture of it, they now have it without buying it. Like the world has changed.
But there's another way to monetize. I know
There
for
is.
sure that there's another way to monetize. I have a friend who's a successful artist, like I told you before.
Well, corporations will contract you to design.
To
and
design
make their
stuff
shit.
for you, yeah. I forgot to
And
mention this.
pure artists will say that's not real art. Because you're doing it for a whole other goal then.
Yeah.
And I don't
You're
know.
trying to be a professional artist and make money. And at the end of the day, we all need money. If
Then
you want
that's
to be a
not art.
professional
Yeah.
artist,
And
it is
some
art.
people say it's not
It's
art.
still art. Well, I don't know. I'm not an artist. I think it's art.
I'm not saying I believe it is or not. I'm just saying there's
And some people believe that a woman shouldn't talk about martial arts.
True.
So, what
then
some people
let
say.
Let me bring this full circle back to martial arts, and then now I have a question about it. If you're a fighter, would you say that the way that you fight
is your art, or
yes, and then if people want to or don't want to watch you fight, does that mean that they don't like your art? Right?
See,
go ahead.
I believe that, and here's how I split apart this a binary. There is craft and there is art. Craft can be so good that it becomes art. Like whether it's the craft of throwing the perfect jab, cross, hook, and kick, the craft of installing a window or door so fucking perfect that like a machine cut it in there. Right? There's the craft aspect. And there are a lot of artists that, in my opinion, aren't that great of a craftsman, but they produce art that I like, that I think has a statement, that has an originality, it's authentic and all that. Like bands. There are cover bands that cover the original song so good with their own little twist that becomes art in and of itself. The art of covering a song with your style infused in it. Mashups is an incredible modern art. People mash it up to there are 3 songs. I love good mashups because it suddenly is this new perspective on 2 songs I've been hearing for years, and now you're blending them. It's like, to me, mashup is incredible art. Photoshop, photo merging is what I like. I like the blending of themes and all that stuff. And it does lead in that whole thing of what even is art.
Okay.
How do you even define art, right? Everything is art and nothing is art.
I have I have said those exact words, so I get it. Yes, I understand. That makes sense.
My thing that I'm thinking about with art is I feel like society without good art looks pretty shit, right? Like everything kind of sucks. And I think
Yes.
how
Creativity in general
Yes.
makes the world.
yeah,
And
it's like we need things that like encourage art in our society, and I feel like
in authoritarian
sometimes-
worlds or the panopticon smartphone world or whatever you want to call it, creativity is often constrained and suppressed and driven down. And when those authoritarian rules come, the people who could best get the message of freedom across are artists, which is why artists get rounded up. Artists, educators, intellectuals get rounded up because they're the ones who could move people's opinion
and capture people's emotions.
and capture people's
Yeah, I think it's really important that art is really important. And though I've never been like that, I think that it's kind of, I almost feel like it's something that you're born with, right? Like you are born to be this way, to be an artist, like your uncle was.
My uncle's an incredible, the best kept LA secret in the fucking world. Len Espenson, I don't know if his work's on the internet right now, but it is now being stored and cared for by somebody who does have lots of money, and one day it's going to be.
And he never had a
The next
show and
time-
just
never had a
created
show.
art pieces in his
But
house.
carved
but yeah,
pieces in his house for 40 years, a house of the
and
most
did it
awesome
just for
art.
art's sake.
Just for art's sake.
Well, I feel
For
like
himself.
I feel like that's what you're in the middle of doing because you have all this awesome
Well,
art.
he hasn't been producing though, but I think that it would probably
there's
be
stuff.
good for him, for Chris, to have that outlet to go back to creating some more art. I mean, he
Yeah.
made soap recently. I feel like him doing things like that is really good for his soul.
That's craft.
Because
I do that.
but
I like
in
it.
your
It's art,
soul,
too.
you
Yeah.
are an artist, and I think our daughter is that too. And I see her make art, and it's something that I'm very
Yes.
proud to help, have her do that, because it's the next generation. Like you said, we can't just let this go away and not be part
And
of
guys,
society.
order a bar of combat-based fucking soap. It's the best
Yeah,
soap. It's the best soap.
combatbase.com. We have inventory, large bars,
Two
small
things before,
bars.
before we go out of here. I first, without even knowing that it was your gym, 2 pieces of your art that I saw before I ever knew who you were was when you made, it was, you probably have it in here somewhere, the combat base soap that
Yes.
looks like Fight Club.
Yep.
Fight Club
Yep.
is my #1 favorite movie of all time.
Great
Fantastic
film, yep.
movie, right? So that was the first thing I saw, and I was like, what is that? That's awesome. That was my wallpaper on my computer.
The brown belt maturity.
Yes. Yeah. That was my,
awesome.
I never knew who you were, but that photo was my wallpaper on my computer. I don't even know when you made that. That's probably 20 years ago or
I
something.
made that in like
No, not that long.
2017, I think.
Yeah.
That captures the brown belt getting coached by the black belt and it all clicking. That moment where it becomes not just sport, but becomes art, right? At least I don't know. I mean,
I think we
that's-
have that one online at combatbase.com. See,
that's-
you also need a good manager. Every artist needs a
Yes.
good manager. I
Of
don't know
my-
how good I am.
I'm
just a woman, after all.
Illustrated art, that's my absolute favorite.
Can't be that good.
I love that one.
I'm not
It's a
that
very
good.
good. It's a very good piece. Very good piece.
And my woman up there, my misogynistic
What's
art.
that one called? We don't know. A woman wraps herself in a belt.
The dream girl up there in the clouds.
Melissa watching TV.
All right, we got to wrap up. I got to pee.
Yeah, me
Yeah.
too. I just peed, but let's get out of here.
There's a lot of peeing going on.
Kick-ass
this
show.
Podcast.
Thanks, guys. That was fun.
Yes.
You know, don't Trace.
Pound, like, and subscribe.
Sweet.
All right, I got pee.
把的毅力，一步一个脚印，把千里变成大事。
Well, we all have targets on our backs these days.